The act of reviewing is one surprisingly apparent part of a great amount of different media. It's found anything from magazines to YouTube videos and often covers anything from games, movies and music to books, brands and the platforms hosting the content themselves. In the context of YouTube, some of the biggest names in the realm of film critics include the three Sardonicast hunks, Red Letter Media, Channel Awesome, Channel Criswell, Quentin Reviews and Chris Stockerman, my personal favorites of which have to be the various cast members, with only a few others standing out as remarkable. For the sake of context, only 1/3 of the appropriately titled Sardonicast really does things outside of film. While Your Movie Sucks only very scarcely seem to try his hands at content independent of other forms of entertainment, and Ralph, who literally just quit doing regular reviews, makes a movie once every 4 years, the equally appropriately named I Hate Everything, though known for his search for the worst film review series, heavily rely on his array of I Hate videos criticizing modern day pop culture. When it comes to the reviews themselves, the contrast between the three creators mostly comes down to their individual ways of focusing. Taking the film step by step and highlighting what stood out to him, IHE differs from Ralph, who seems to more critique the quality of the filmmaking itself with bullet points, talking about how the movie is shot, written and acted. While IG also mentions these points, rather than listing issues, highlights and low points, the main goal of his videos are very clearly to take you on the journey along with him. He focuses more on the director's intentions and the context for the film's existence, rather than just putting weight on the film's presentation without providing context. It is important to note that Ralph has done his reviews in quite a number of ways, and he does his videos, or rather did his videos, similarly to IHE. Having two main series, the short, genuine, to the point quickies, and the longer, more entertaining, fully fledged reviews, YMIS does his videos in a very similar way to the ones previously mentioned. To my knowledge, as well as in, few people outside of the podcast have tried to follow genres other than reviews. Occasionally, some creators try reviewing content outside their comfort zone, like music and games. While music reviews functions a bit like the less popular twin brother of the movie-based counterpart, only really featuring names like the best teeth in the game and few others, the gaming scheme seemed to almost stand on its own, isolated from the rest of the world. Excluding my second channel, I jumped off the admittedly not so sinking ship of gaming-related videos quite a while ago, as I find most content in the category absolutely dreadful, for a variety of reasons. Loud volume.
I'm black.
Oh, oh, he's right there. No. Unfunny jokes.
Oh my god, that was an accident.
Overused shticks.
No, hi.
Oh shit!
And worst of all, old memes.
What are you? Welcome to Chili's.
Please take one for yourself. Wait. No! Yeah, it wasn't my proudest time period. At this moment in time, only a very small supply of good creators remain making gaming-related content in 2018, the most remarkable of which are JonTron and Video Game Donkey. Previously known as half of the Game Grumps, JonTron is for a variety of reasons one of the most respected content creators on YouTube. He's been making content since 2005, and like a decreasing number of others, he's what some might define as YouTube royalty. Infamously, the time gap in between uploads is getting bigger as we speak, and is therefore, as Stoko calls him, a staple of quality over quantity. Most famous for his funny moment style videos, Donkey also talks about his thoughts on games in the form of well thought out reviews, creating great gags and inside jokes along the way. Unlike most other channels on YouTube, and in particular the gaming side, Video Game Donkey, or Jason, is actually funny. Besides his wit, he provides some actual arguments that, while still being well backed, is presented in an immensely entertaining way. On the other side of the hedge stands IGN, unable to give anything below a 7 out of 10, making that channel a nice little echo chamber of bad game journalism and laughably terrible players. When you create content dependent on different media to the aforementioned extent, you run the risk of getting copyright claimed, striked, and seldomly even sued. There are countless examples of false copyright claims all around YouTube, but perhaps the most notable ones has to be the suing of H3H3 and the feud of I Hate Everything and Derek Savage. As much as I could talk for hours about it, those topics are needless to say very dead and admittedly self-explanatory, so I'll be quick. In case you're somehow unaware, back in May of 2016, the YouTube power couple, Ethan and Hila Klein, put out a video announcing that a quote-unquote pickup artist they had previously criticized in a video of theirs were taking legal action for copyright infringement, misrepresentation, and defamation of character. With most claims against H3 being unjustified and clearly filed out of spite, it was highly unlikely that they wouldn't end up successfully beating the lawsuit. And just like that, a year and a half and hundreds of thousands of dollars later, they won the lawsuit, and in doing so, also creating what could be interpreted as a quintessential landmark for fair use on YouTube. Another way less serious but still fairly integral case of copyright misuse was when the self-titled Daddy Derek threatened to sue I Hate Everything for criticizing his feature film Cool Cat Saves the Kids. Being obviously in the wrong, Derek claimed he had a team of lawyers in the palm of his hand, and in a petty attempt to silence IG, notoriously impersonated a law firm. Since then, the video criticizing Savage's film has been reinstated, and both parties have moved on pretty unscathed. Derek will continue making movies of the same quality, except about school shootings now for some reason, and Alex will continue talking about movies of that level of incompetence. While certain companies, such as Disney and Nintendo, are practically infamous for condemning use of their property to an eerie extent, and others seem to just strike willy-nilly, creators' livelihoods are regularly threatened. For a long time, critics have had to switch to Patreon for a consistent source of income, as they are so often being shut down by copyright that it's impossible to live from ad revenue alone, to the point where some just turn off ads altogether. The necessity of Patreon and other sites of the same premise is very specific to the consumer. Primarily creators in the genres of animation and other short-form high-quality content can get away with blatantly asking their audience for money for it being actually warranted, but it's becoming more and more regular to have a Patreon if you are already making bank from other platforms. Personally, I find it borderline insulting that people who are almost unarguably rich beg for money from their exploitable fanbase. But of course it is choice and simply an opportunity if you feel like donating money for what is probably already overpaid people. Patreon is a tool used for both good and bad. In many cases it's unnecessary, but in others it's vital for securing an artist's funding. I think the premise of donating money and allowing creators such as review channels to continue making content is an integral part of the online community, and Patreon is admittedly not doing anything any other site wouldn't be doing in its absence. Over the years, the creators I've discussed and many more have received the same small collection of critiques, mainly about nitpicking, and while it is often true, that argument doesn't really make sense to me. The point of review goes parallel with an analysis. As of that, isn't it warranted for review to be overly critical and covering extra detail? In the last while, CinemaSins has gotten a lot of flack, as they seem to misrepresent what film criticism is. They definitely don't go into detail on the films they are talking about and exaggerate the critiques they are dishing out to an unnecessary degree without giving any complimentation or talking about the quality related to the filmmaking. I'd personally have trouble labeling their videos as reviews, as they create an incredibly unbalanced mess of nitpicks that arguably aren't even negatives most of the time, but that's why I think people get it confused. Whether or not satirical, their content is very clearly entertainment rather than opinion pieces. I'm not gonna make the case that the mindset they're promoting isn't toxic, as I'd have a hard time disagreeing with it, but if something as trivial as a flippantly presented collection of differing opinions is enough to ruin your enjoyment of something, you clearly aren't very confident in your own opinion. The issue of that content lies solely in the normalization of their thought process, and it's borderline unarguable that channel isn't pushing a mindset that comes with being critical to a fault. I completely understand disliking what they stand for and the message they're promoting, I'm not trying to debate that, but a lot of people take personal offense when over-exaggerated content targets media they've grown irrationally close to, and that's an issue. Oppositely, in case you're unaware, around 9 months ago IG released a video about the then recently released Star Wars film The Last Jedi. The movie, having gotten a very mixed bag of critical reception, was a fairly controversial subject to have any opinion on. Alex, the creator of IG, while acknowledging that it is indeed a flawed movie, personally really liked the film, and he openly expressed that. So you can imagine all the people with a mental age under 12 would flock to the video, leaving nothing but destruction and poorly worded death threats in their tracks. One of the more remarkable commentators being the YouTuber Rags, who made an hour and 20-minute long response video. Most of the video, very obviously not being scripted, leaves a bunch of poorly communicated arguments that ends up not making any sense. While there are an incredible number of flaws and stupidities in this video, there's one point that takes the cake of borderline retardation.
And you can quote me on this because I stand by it 110%. The Last Jedi is an objectively poorly made film.
One obvious jab often made at critics is the inherent audacity that it takes to believe someone would put weight on your opinion, and yes, it can come off as slightly egotistical, but when you take a second to think about it, people are going to share their opinions. And as much as people like to pretend that's a bad thing, if you can acknowledge that opinions are subjective and that your opinion isn't of higher value than anyone else's, I really do not see the issue. But what takes a real egotist is thinking that your opinion is, in contrast to others, correct. Whether or not art can be criticized objectively and be objectively bad and good is quite the odd topic. Obviously, different people value different things in filmmaking. It really just comes down to the effort and passion the project have been created with, so to think that art can be objectively bad and that people are idiots for liking it is absolutely outrageous. Whether or not you like a piece of art is dependent on your own values and perception. You're completely allowed to dislike what I like, and you're on your right to think what you think, as long as you can argue for yourself. The Last Jedi is definitely not the most controversial movie in film history, but it highlights the stupidity and close-mindedness of the internet exceptionally well. All you have to do is open a comment section discussing the movie to see the inevitable hordes of people who misinterpret intentions. It has, due to confirmation bias, become common to get mad at reviewers for not agreeing with your opinion, and it's starting to be more important for audiences that the criticism panders to them rather than and actually raising interesting points and providing an alternate viewpoint. Contrary to that, it seems that viewers get attached to creators way too easily on both sides of the spectrum. Getting an attachment with a critic is important to understand their priorities, but when it's at a point where you just follow along blindly and just try to pass on others' opinions as your own, a problem begins to arise. It's no longer a rare sight to find someone who's grown so obsessed with media that when said media is criticized, they take it as a personal attack. Definitely not recent news, but still relevant ones. Despite the uselessness and lack of impact that change.org carries with it, multiple petitions have been created trying to shut down film review sites simply because of disagreement. Rotten Tomatoes is definitely a flawed site, and it doesn't stand as an even remotely adequate representation of critical reception, but it's a fucking website. Calm down, lad. The only value critics have is the value you assign to them, and the only reason a critic's opinion could matter enough to piss you off is either if what they say is uninformed or downright disrespectful, or you've placed their thoughts on a ridiculous pedestal. People respond differently to critique of various forms, and YouTube is pretty much known for hosting all toxic debate that stems from people getting to express their opinions. Any mildly popular comment section you find is pretty much doomed to be riddled with stupidity. Even beyond audiences, you don't have to look further than a Content Deputy video to see the epitome of misunderstanding criticism. On the internet, a number of different terms have been abused and are often misunderstood, one of which is free speech. Despite what some people seem to believe, freedom of speech is not a defense from criticism. Hell, saying that your claims being free speech means that they can't be countered or criticized is insanely contradictory, as it's attempting to paint whoever's confronting you as wrong, when the arguments you're making for yourself stands better as a defense for the person questioning your beliefs. Criticizing the right to free speech and simply practicing it by criticizing representation or challenging claims is two very different things. Take responsibility for your own statements and be ready for some backlash. Other people have just as much right to disagree with what you say as you have to say something in the first place. You may have noticed that what I've been doing up to this point is regurgitating exposition and rebutting some of the points I've seen made, and that's because I'm trying to paint the picture of how often criticism is shut down because of simple disagreements. Content cannot be objectively criticized, and personal connection and the feeling the content elicits regularly plays a large role in how entertainment is perceived. A movie exists that's objective. It's your viewpoint of it that's subjective. The real echo chamber really arises without criticism. If you surround yourself with yes men and refuse to challenge yourself, writing off everyone who disagrees with your actions as objectively incorrect, everything will stay the same and everything you say and think will be repeated to you, like if you were a baby. If you can't acknowledge your own flaws and shoots down everyone who points them out to you, you will not improve. The internet is known for housing comments of all kinds, and a sad majority doesn't provide reasonings for their thoughts. Not explaining why you feel the way you do and just stating opinions as fact without giving any context or arguing for your statement creates an incredibly toxic environment for creators and consumers on all platforms. Good and bad is a matter of experience. Obviously, what perfect is different for all of us. I'd for an example say that Hot Fuzz is the perfect comedy movie, because I cannot see how it could possibly be improved upon. But whether or not perfect content can exist is debatable at very best, as perfect would simply imply that it aligns with your subjective viewpoint and follows your taste completely, and it's the exact same the other way around, shockingly. The concept of being flawless is within art a fairly subjective matter, because there's always two sides. What you see as a flaw, others may not, and the same goes backwards. A movie or song can have had an objective disastrous production, and there are undoubtedly very real elements which can be talked about objectively, but the beauty of art is that the final product can be interpreted in a lot of ways. What people seem to very often misunderstand is that being critical and being negative is very far from the same. Criticism is, if utilized correctly, for the purpose of improvement, while the word negativity would imply that there is no purpose. When it comes down to it, issues lie in everything. Elitism and ignorance is mostly tied to a minority of audiences and entertainers being dumb. And dumb people acting dumb is inevitable. No matter what side of the fence you stand on, our opinions are just opinions, and different people think differently. At this point you might be thinking that this video says itself, and I'd have to agree, but sadly enough most people on the internet has trouble thinking for themselves, and need a helping hand when getting told what to believe. Think for yourself and be civil about your opinions. It's not that hard.
Shut the fuck up, suck my ass. The name's JARBS and the content is trash. Big ass JARBS is a bitch. Suck a lot of dick, damn me thick. Ooh.
You may have noticed that this is the first upload on my channel in almost 5 months. Whilst I don't have an excuse for my absence, nor do I really think I need one, I've been working on and off on a number of projects, including the video you were just watching. This truly did take a lot of time, by the way, so if you thought it was alright or above, do take the time to engage in some way. I'd appreciate it. I'm very lonely. Well, back to the point, my boys. During my vacation and researching this video, I ran across the YouTube channel Humans Talking About Movies. They do a lot of regular media type videos involving around 4 to 6 people just talking about a movie they recently watched. That channel is quite underappreciated, and seeing that as this is a video about online critics and mostly film reviewers, I thought it could be appropriate to recommend this channel to the one person stuck with me to the end of this. I want to quickly thank TechCorra for setting up and organizing a new Discord server for me. I've never been huge on Discord or communication as a whole, but I'll be hanging out there every once in a while. A link to the outro rap music video my good friend Spectrophobia and I made, and all else can be found in the description.
Shut the fuck up, suck my ass. The name's JARBS and the content is trash. Big ass JARBS is a bitch, suck a lot of dick, damn he thick. Ooh, pick a beat from the beat ball. Yo, gonna beat my meat to the beatbox. Ooh, 360 no scope on the cut back G. Calling depression bipolar kill streak.